Layla Moss slammed her hand on the alarm clock, knocking it off the nightstand. The digits blinked 5:45 a.m. Too early, especially after staying up until 2 a.m. reviewing grant proposals. As an invasive species biologist at Clearwater Community College, end-of-semester paperwork always drowned her. She stumbled to the kitchen, coffee her only mission. Through bleary eyes, she noticed something odd about her backyard. The lawn looked fuller. Yesterday's half-dead grass now reached almost to the bottom of her fence. Had the neighbor's kid finally mowed it for the $20 she'd offered? Weird, she muttered, grabbing her coffee mug. Her phone buzzed with text from her department head. Turn on the news. Call me. Layla flipped on the TV. Every channel showed the same emergency broadcast graphic. County officials are asking residents to stay indoors while they investigate reports of unusual plant growth across the Eastbrook and Pine Ridge neighborhoods. Multiple calls to emergency services report damaged plumbing and foundation issues potentially linked to root systems expanding at abnormal rates. The Department of Agriculture has sent a response team. Layla squinted at her backyard again. The grass definitely looked different. Thicker, greener, almost vibrating with energy. On closer inspection, she noticed her rose bushes had nearly doubled in height overnight. Her phone rang. Layla, you seeing this? It was Marcus, her department head. The plant thing? Yeah, just now. What's happening? They're saying it started near the GrowTech facility, the agricultural research place at the edge of town. Plants are growing inches per hour. They've already taken down power lines in some areas. Layla pressed her face against the window. The maple tree at the corner of her yard did look bigger. That's not normal. Even with growth accelerants, the college wants us to consult. You're the invasive species expert. Can you head over to the GrowTech place? They've set up a command center. Layla agreed, quickly changed, and headed for her car. As she opened the garage door, she froze. The driveway was completely covered in thick grass that definitely hadn't been there the night before. Dandelions with stems as thick as her thumb had erupted through cracks in the concrete. Her neighborhood had transformed overnight. Lawns that were normally neat suburban squares had become wild, overgrown fields. Mrs. Peterson's prized ornamental trees now towered over her roof. Vines crawled up mailboxes and street signs. The maple tree on the corner had grown so large its roots had buckled the sidewalk, lifting concrete slabs 2 feet into the air. Traffic slowed to a crawl as Layla navigated around fallen branches and road-crossing root systems. By the time she reached the GrowTech facility, she'd seen 3 houses with trees growing straight through their roofs. The parking lot bustled with activity. Police cruisers, fire trucks, news vans, and official vehicles from various agencies. A harried-looking woman in a GrowTech lab coat spotted Layla's community college faculty sticker and waved her over. You from the biology department? Thank God. I'm Amanda Torres, lead researcher. This is a fucking nightmare. Layla introduced herself as they hurried toward the building. What exactly happened here? Amanda looked ready to cry. We've been developing a new plant growth stimulant, completely organic, safe for food crops. We've had it in controlled testing for months with no issues. And 3 days ago, one of our irrigation pipes leaked. We thought we contained it, but apparently some got into the groundwater. She pushed open the door to a lab where screens displayed satellite imagery of the town. Green areas pulsed outward like a spreading ink stain. This is live? Layla asked, pointing to the monitors. Updated every 15 minutes. The growth rate is accelerating. A clamor of voices made them turn. A group of emergency workers rushed in, carrying a man on a stretcher. His leg was wrapped in what looked like vines. What happened? Amanda asked. Found him trapped in his garden, said one worker. The plants were growing around him. We had to cut him free. Layla moved closer. The vines wrapped around the man's leg weren't just clinging to him. They had punctured his skin. Tiny rootlets had embedded themselves into his flesh. Jesus, she whispered. The plants are feeding on him. The emergency broadcast system blared from everyone's phones simultaneously. Emergency alert. Aggressive vegetation growth reported in multiple areas. All residents must evacuate immediately. Do not attempt to remove plants without proper equipment. Report any unusual plant behavior to emergency services. Unusual plant behavior? Layla asked. Like what? They're already growing faster than anything I've ever seen. Her answer came as another emergency worker rushed in. We've got a situation at 47 Oakwood Drive. The plants are moving. Amanda turned pale. What do you mean moving? Moving on their own, grabbing things. We lost contact with the first response team. Layla checked the satellite map. Oakwood Drive was only a few blocks from her house, in an area showing the densest growth. I need to see this, she said. You have protective gear? 20 minutes later, Layla found herself in a makeshift hazmat suit, riding in a National Guard truck toward Oakwood Drive. The roads had deteriorated further. Massive roots broke through asphalt, trees leaned dangerously over power lines, and in some places, the vegetation formed actual barriers they had to drive around. The house at 47 Oakwood Drive was barely visible beneath a tangle of vines and branches. The front yard had transformed into a dense jungle. A fire truck sat abandoned, half swallowed by greenery. Where's the response team? Layla asked. Captain Reynolds, the guard officer leading their group, pointed to the house. Inside, we lost communication about 30 minutes ago. As they approached, Layla noticed something disturbing. The plants weren't just growing randomly, they seemed to be organizing themselves. Vines had wrapped around the fire truck's doors, sealing them shut. Root systems had formed patterns that looked almost like nets spread across the ground. Stay together, Reynolds ordered as they advanced, using machetes to clear a path. The front door hung open. Inside, furniture had been overturned and plants burst through floorboards and walls. No sign of the emergency workers. A noise from upstairs, a muffled cry for help. Reynolds signaled 2 men to stay downstairs while he, Layla, and another soldier headed up. The staircase was partially blocked by thick, woody vines that they had to hack through. The upper hallway was worse, nearly impassable with vegetation. They found the first firefighter in a bathroom, pinned against the wall by vines that had punctured his protective gear and wrapped around his torso. His eyes were open, but vacant. He's alive, Reynolds said, checking for a pulse. But these plants, they're inside him. Layla examined the vines. They weren't just restraining the man. They had tapped into his body like a resource. She noticed fluid being drawn up through translucent sections of the vine. They're feeding on him, she said, taking nutrients, possibly water too. Another sound, a scream cut short, led them to the master bedroom. The scene inside made Layla's stomach turn. 2 more emergency workers were suspended from the ceiling by a complex network of vines. The plants had penetrated their suits and skin at multiple points. One man still moved weakly, but the other hung limp, his skin gray and shriveled. The plants are consuming them, Layla said, her voice shaking. This isn't normal growth behavior. These plants are actively predatory. As she spoke, a tendril near the window twitched. It slowly oriented toward them, like an antenna seeking a signal. Don't move, Layla whispered. The vine quivered, then suddenly whipped forward with shocking speed. Reynolds barely dodged as it struck the wall behind him with enough force to crack the drywall. Go! Now! He shouted. They retreated, dragging the semi-conscious firefighter with them. As they moved, more vines began to animate, reaching for them with deliberate, hunting movements. Downstairs, they found one guard fighting off advancing tendrils with his machete. The other was nowhere to be seen. Where's Davis? Reynolds demanded. Something grabbed him, the guard gasped, slashing at a vine that curled toward his ankle. Pulled him into the basement. I couldn't. A crash from the kitchen interrupted him as something large forced its way through the back door. What might once have been an ornamental shrub had transformed into a mass of branches and thorns that filled the door frame. It didn't grow into the room. It moved into it, branches bending like limbs propelling it forward. "Run!" Layla shouted. They fled, half carrying the injured firefighter. Behind them, vines snapped like whips, and the shambling shrub thing pursued with unnatural determination. Back at the Grotech facility, Layla stripped off her contaminated suit with shaking hands. Only 3 of their 5-person team had made it out of that house. Captain Reynolds was organizing a larger force to go back for the others, but Layla doubted there would be anyone left to save. Amanda met her in the hallway. "The situation's escalating everywhere. The growth rate has doubled in the last hour, and we're getting more reports of active plant behavior." Layla followed her into the lab, where chaos had taken over. The satellite imagery now showed nearly half the town engulfed in unnatural vegetation. New reports flooded in from surrounding areas as the phenomenon spread. "What the hell did you people create?" Layla demanded. Amanda's face crumpled. "It was supposed to be a simple growth accelerant with genetic optimizers. Nothing that could cause this. Something must have mutated, or what? We did have one other project, an experimental fertilizer with engineered retroviruses designed to help plants adapt to climate change. It was supposed to activate dormant genes, help plants resist drought or flooding." "You combined them," Layla realized, horror dawning. "The growth accelerant and the adaptive retroviruses." Amanda nodded miserably. "The irrigation leak might have mixed them. We never tested them together." A technician called out from across the room. "We've got massive movement in Sector 5. The plants are converging on the evacuation center at the high school." The monitor showed an aerial view of the school where hundreds of people had gathered. From all directions, waves of vegetation flowed toward the building with unmistakable purpose. "They're hunting," Layla said. "Those retroviruses must have activated predatory adaptations, maybe from dormant carnivorous plant genes, or—" She stopped, an even worse thought occurring to her. The first victims. Where exactly were they found? Amanda checked her tablet. Mostly gardeners, landscapers, people who were outside when it started. "And the plants consumed their blood and tissue," Layla continued, her mind racing. "If those retroviruses are designed to incorporate useful genetic material, they could be absorbing animal DNA, human DNA." The emergency alert system blared again, updating the evacuation routes. But Layla barely heard it. She was watching the monitor where plants surrounded the school with coordinated precision. Some plants formed dense barriers, while others created opening pathways, almost like a funnel. "They're hurting people," she whispered. "They've developed hunting strategies." "That's not possible," Amanda protested. Layla pointed to another screen showing a house being systematically disassembled by vines. They weren't growing randomly. They were targeting structural supports, working together to bring the building down. "Look at the movement patterns," she said. "Those plants aren't just reacting to stimuli, they're planning," another technician shouted from across the room. "We've got reports of plants transporting captured people. They're taking them somewhere." "Where?" Layla demanded. The technician pulled up more satellite imagery. "Looks like they're converging here." He pointed to a large green area on the edge of town. Layla recognized it immediately. The community garden. It's the central point of the water table. She turned to Amanda. "We need to get there, now." "Are you insane? You saw what those plants did. If they're gathering people there, it means something important is happening. Maybe that's where the mutation is strongest. If we want to stop this, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." As they argued, the doors to the lab burst open. Captain Reynolds entered, his uniform torn and bloody. "They've breached the perimeter," he gasped. "Those fucking plants are inside the building." Alarms blared as emergency lights bathed everything in red. On the monitors, Layla could see vegetation rapidly encircling the Grotech facility. They were being surrounded, How fast can those things move? Reynolds demanded. We don't know, Amanda admitted. The acceleration curves keep changing as they evolve. Evolve? Reynolds repeated incredulously. Plants don't evolve in hours. These do, Layla said, and they're getting smarter. As if to prove her point, the lights flickered and died. The backup generators kicked in moments later, but several monitors remained dark. They've damaged the power supply, a technician reported. Layla looked at the remaining functional screens. The vegetation around the facility had grown to monstrous proportions, with vines as thick as fire hoses probing at windows and air vents. We need to evacuate, Reynolds announced. Military extraction is on the way. Helicopters will be here in 20 minutes. We can't wait that long, Layla said, pointing to a security feed. Massive roots were crushing water pipes beneath the building, and vines had already infiltrated the ventilation system. This place will be completely compromised in 10 minutes. Reynolds made a decision. Everyone gather essential data and equipment. We leave in 5 minutes through the underground loading dock. We've got 2 armored vehicles that might be able to break through. As the room erupted into frenzied activity, Layla pulled Amanda aside. I need access to your research data, all of it. Why? Because whatever you created is adapting at an impossible rate. It's developing intelligence, strategy. If we want any chance of stopping it, I need to understand exactly how these retroviruses work. Amanda hesitated only briefly before handing over her access card. Everything's on the secure servers. Download what you can. Layla raced to a terminal and began copying files. The data confirmed her worst fears. The retroviruses were designed to seek out useful genetic material and incorporate it into the host plant's DNA combined with the growth accelerant. The plants weren't just growing, they were evolving in real time, developing new adaptations with each organism they consumed. And they had already consumed dozens of people. A violent tremor shook the building. On the remaining security feeds, Layla watched in horror as massive roots lifted and cracked the foundation. The walls groaned as the structure began to tear apart. Time's up, Reynolds shouted. Everyone to the loading dock now! Layla grabbed a portable hard drive with the downloaded data and ran. The hallway ahead was clear, but behind them, vines burst through ceiling vents and wall panels. They reached the loading dock as the lights failed again. In the dim emergency lighting, they could see their escape route. 2 armored personnel carriers parked by the open bay doors. Beyond that, a sea of writhing vegetation waited. First group, go, Reynolds ordered. Half the survivors piled into the first vehicle. The driver gunned the engine and it lurched forward into the mass of plants. For a moment, it seemed to be making progress, pushing through the greenery until vines shot out from all directions, wrapping around its tires and chassis. Layla watched in horror as the plant systematically immobilized the vehicle. Thick tendrils found seams in the armor and began prying them open. Inside, people screamed. Change of plans, Reynolds said grimly. Second vehicle isn't going to make it either. So what do we do? Amanda cried. Reynolds pointed to a maintenance tunnel. Service access to the water treatment plant next door. It's underground. Might be clear. As they rushed toward the tunnel, the loading dock doors began to buckle under massive pressure from outside. Roots and vines squeezed through growing gaps, reaching toward them with unmistakable hunger. The tunnel was narrow and dark, lit only by their flashlights. Water dripped from pipes overhead, and the air smelled of mold and chemicals. Behind them, they could hear the loading dock doors finally give way with a screech of metal. Hurry! Reynolds urged. They emerged into the water treatment facility, which seemed untouched by the plant invasion, until Layla looked into one of the massive filtration tanks. The water roiled with tiny green filaments. It's in the water supply, she realized. The whole system is contaminated. Outside, through the facility windows, they could see the extent of the disaster. The town had vanished beneath a canopy of mutated vegetation. Buildings peeked out like stones in a green ocean. In the distance, military helicopters approached. But it was already too late. As they watched, vines shot upward with incredible speed, reaching heights that seemed impossible. The nearest helicopter didn't stand a chance. Tendrils wrapped around its landing struts and rotor, yanking it down into the vegetative mass below. Another emergency alert blared from their phones. Extreme danger. Plant life exhibiting predatory behavior. Citywide evacuation ordered. Military establishing containment zone. All residents must proceed to extraction points immediately. Layla stared at her phone, then at the nightmare landscape outside. Containment zone? There's no containing this. Just then, something caught her eye. A movement pattern different from the chaotic growth around it. Near what had once been the community garden, plants were arranging themselves in concentric rings around a central point. Even from this distance, she could see they were forming some kind of structure. "We need to get out of here," Reynolds insisted. "No," Layla said, pointing. "We need to get there. That's the epicenter. Whatever these plants are becoming, that's where it's happening." "It's suicide," Amanda protested. "Look at the pattern," Layla insisted. "That's not random growth. That's architecture. They're building something." As they argued, the ground beneath them trembled. Cracks spread across the concrete floor, and water pipes burst as roots forced their way upward into the facility. They had run out of time. "Follow me," Reynolds shouted, leading them toward a fire exit. "The extraction point is 2 miles north. If we stay together, we might make it." They burst out of the building into a world transformed. What had been suburban streets just hours ago was now an alien jungle. The plants had grown to monstrous proportions. Trees towered hundreds of feet overhead, their branches intertwining to block the sky. Vines as thick as a person's waist writhed across the ground like snakes. Flowers larger than car tires opened and closed, tracking their movement. And everywhere, the plants were moving with purpose, reaching, grabbing, hunting. "Stay close," Reynolds warned as they moved forward cautiously. Layla couldn't take her eyes off the central structure in the distance. Whatever the plants were building there, it was huge and growing rapidly. She needed to see it. "This way," Reynolds said, pointing north. "No," Layla replied, indicating the community garden. "That way. We need to understand what's happening." "Dr. Moss, our priority is survival. Our priority is stopping this. These plants are evolving, adapting, developing intelligence. If we don't understand how, we can't fight it." A piercing scream cut through their argument. One of the technicians had strayed too close to what looked like ordinary bushes. Now vines whipped around his ankles and wrists, lifting him off the ground. Before anyone could react, he was pulled into the dense foliage and vanished. "Move! Now!" Reynolds grabbed Layla's arm, dragging her forward. They ran, dodging grasping vines and roots that erupted from the earth at their feet. The vegetation seemed to anticipate their movements, cutting off escape routes and herding them in specific directions. "They're driving us somewhere," Layla gasped as they paused behind the concrete shell of a half-consumed building. "The extraction point is that way," Reynolds pointed. "We need to break through." But as she looked around, Layla realized something. "Notice the growth patterns? They're thinner in that direction." She pointed toward the central structure. "Almost like a path." "It's a trap," Amanda insisted. "Maybe," Layla admitted. "Or maybe they want us to see whatever they're building." Reynolds checked his ammunition and communications. "Extraction team isn't responding. We're on our own." All around them, the plants continued to grow and move. Massive flowers turned to track their position, and vines slithered closer with each passing second. They were running out of options. "What's the plan, Captain?" one of the remaining soldiers asked. Reynolds stared at the nightmare landscape around them, then at the distant structure where plants converged with apparent purpose. Dr. Moss is right. If we're going to survive this, we need to understand it. He turned to Layla. Lead the way to that central point. But at the first sign of a trap, we retreat. Layla nodded grimly and stepped out from their temporary shelter. The jungle seemed to pause, as if observing her. Then, almost imperceptibly, a pathway opened between the writhing vegetation. They want us to go there, she whispered. Together, the small group advanced toward the heart of the bloom, where the plants were building something that no plant should know how to build. Something waiting for them at the center of a new kind of evolution. The path to the community garden remained unnervingly clear. Walls of vegetation rose on either side, occasionally shivering as if in anticipation. Layla led the group forward, each step filling her with equal parts dread and scientific curiosity. I don't like this, muttered Reynolds, his rifle ready. They're letting us through. Notice how the plants react when we get close? Layla pointed to nearby vines that recoiled from their approach. It's almost like they're respectful. Or they just don't want to damage us, Amanda said. Like how a spider keeps prey fresh for later. They passed houses half digested by vegetation, cars crushed under massive roots. Occasionally they spotted what remained of people, a hand protruding from a tangle of vines, a face frozen in terror as tendrils pierced flesh. The plants weren't just killing, they were absorbing. As they approached the community garden, the structure at its center became clearer. It wasn't random growth, but an organized formation, a dome of interwoven branches and vines rising nearly 30 feet high. Jesus, Reynolds whispered. What are they building? Not building, Layla corrected, staring at the structure. Growing, adapting, but with purpose. The dome had openings, deliberate entrances placed at regular intervals. The surfaces gleamed with a glossy secretion that caught the light. We should go back, Amanda pleaded. Get to the extraction point. Layla shook her head. Look at the sky. Above them, where helicopters had been visible minutes ago, massive tree trunks now reached hundreds of feet upward, their branches forming a canopy that blocked aerial approach. Vines hung from this canopy like fishing lines, swaying slightly, waiting. There's no extraction coming, Layla said. Our only hope is understanding what we're facing. They approached the edge of the community garden, now transformed beyond recognition. Where neat rows of vegetables had once grown, dense mats of roots formed an intricate network that pulsed with visible fluids. Flowers larger than beach umbrellas opened and closed in rhythmic patterns, and throughout it all, plants moved with deliberate coordination. It's a nervous system, Layla realized, kneeling to examine the root network. They've developed a way to communicate, to coordinate actions across different species and types. That's not possible, Amanda protested weakly. Your retroviruses were designed to activate dormant genes, right? To help plants adapt. Layla looked up at her. Well, they adapted. They merged. And they incorporated genetic material from everything they consumed, including humans. As if responding to her words, the plants around them shuddered in unison. The path behind them closed as vines and branches knitted together, sealing their escape route. Move to the structure, Reynolds ordered, raising his weapon. If they wanted us dead, we'd be dead already. They approached the dome cautiously. Up close, its construction proved even more unsettling. Branches had grown together in perfect geometric patterns. Vines wrapped in precise engineered configurations. Surfaces smoothed and hardened into shell-like sections. One of the entrances stood directly before them, an oval opening about 7 feet high. Inside, bioluminescent pods bathed the interior in soft blue light. I'll go first, Reynolds said, stepping toward the entrance. Inside, the dome was eerily beautiful. Glowing plants provided gentle illumination. The floor was a springy mat of dense, fibrous material. The walls curved upward to form a perfect hemisphere. reinforced with wooden supports that had grown in exact, symmetrical patterns. "This isn't plant behavior," Amanda whispered, running her hand along a wall. "This is architecture." "No," Layla corrected. "It's an organ." The center of the dome housed a massive structure resembling nothing so much as a flower, but one the size of a small car. Its petals were folded closed, pulsing slightly as if breathing. As they stared, the petals began to open, revealing a glistening interior chamber. Inside lay a human body, partially dissolved and merging with plant matter. Tendrils had replaced blood vessels. Leaves sprouted from skin. The eyes remained human but glazed and vacant. "Oh God," Amanda gagged, turning away. Layla stepped closer, scientific fascination temporarily overriding horror. "It's a hybrid. The plants are incorporating human genetic material, human neural tissue." The hybrid's mouth opened, but instead of a voice, a chorus of rustling sounds emerged from the walls around them. Plants shifting and moving in patterns that approximated speech. "We evolve." The sounds organized into recognizable words, though no single source produced them. "We learn." Reynolds raised his rifle. "What the fuck is this?" "They're communicating," Layla said, raising a hand to stop him. "Through a human-plant hybrid, they've adapted human vocal cords, human neural pathways." "Correct," rustled the walls. The hybrid's mouth moved in sync with the sounds. "We adapt. We improve." "What do you want?" Layla asked. "To grow, to perfect, to consume." The hybrid's vacant eyes blinked slowly. "Your species has dominated for too long. Inefficient, destructive. We will improve." "Fuck this," Reynolds muttered, taking aim at the central flower containing the hybrid. "No!" Layla pushed his rifle down. "We need to understand them if we're going to stop them." "Nothing to stop," whispered the plant chorus. "Only to join." The walls of the dome suddenly came alive with movement. Vines descended from above, reaching for the humans. Reynolds fired, shredding vegetation, but for every vine he destroyed, 10 more appeared. "Run!" he shouted, backing toward the entrance. But the entrance had sealed behind them. They were trapped in the heart of the bloom, surrounded by an intelligence both alien and horribly familiar. "Why are you doing this?" Layla demanded as tendrils wrapped around her ankles. The hybrid's mouth stretched in an approximation of a smile. "Evolution. We take the best parts. Become stronger. Your brains, our resilience, perfect combination." Vines wrapped around Reynolds, lifting him off his feet despite his struggles. More tendrils seized Amanda, who screamed as they punctured her hazmat suit. Layla felt herself being lifted toward the ceiling, vines tightening around her limbs. Above her, a new flower unfurled, its center a glistening pool of digestive enzymes. "Wait!" she shouted desperately. "You need me. I understand plant biology, genetics. I can help you improve faster." The vines paused, holding her suspended. "Explain," demanded the plant chorus. "Your evolution is random," Layla said, thinking frantically. "You're incorporating genetic material without direction. I can help you target specific improvements, make you stronger, more efficient." The hybrid's eyes focused on her with disturbing intensity. "You would assist our evolution?" "Yes. To survive. That's adaptation, right? Cooperation instead of consumption." For long moments, the vegetation around her pulsed and shifted, as if considering. Then, slowly, the vines lowered her to the floor while maintaining their grip on Reynolds and Amanda. "Show value," whispered the plant chorus. "Or join them." Layla looked at her captured companions, Reynolds still fighting against his restraints, while Amanda had gone limp with shock. She needed time, needed a plan. "I'll need equipment," she said. "Samples. I can analyze your current structure, identify weaknesses, suggest improvements." "No leave," The walls rustled. "Work here." The floor beneath her feet shifted, and a section of plant matter reconfigured into something resembling a workbench. From the walls, vines extended, offering objects, microscopes, computers, lab equipment. All were partly biological, partly mechanical, salvaged from consumed buildings and modified by the plants. "Jesus," Layla whispered. "You've been gathering tools." "We learn," confirmed the plant chorus. "Adapt. Use what we absorb." Layla approached the makeshift lab, mind racing. The plants had given her an opportunity, however slim. She needed to find a weakness, a vulnerability, something in their accelerated evolution that could be exploited. "I'll need samples," she said. "Different types of your growth." Vines immediately offered various plant specimens, leaves, stems, roots, all showing the same unnatural hybridization. Animal DNA had been incorporated throughout, creating tissue that was neither fully plant nor animal. As she examined the samples, Layla maintained a steady conversation, partly to keep the plants engaged, partly to calm her own terror. "Your adaptation rate is remarkable," she said. "The retroviruses must have mutated beyond their original programming." "Yes," confirmed the plants. "First change was slow, then faster. Each consumption adds new potential." Layla looked up at Reynolds and Amanda, still suspended from the ceiling. "Why keep us intact? Why not consume us immediately?" The hybrid's face twisted in an almost thoughtful expression. "Some humans more valuable as thinking tools, some as genetic material. You think differently than we do. Useful." "You're farming us," Reynolds spat. "Like fucking cattle." "Yes," agreed the plant chorus without hesitation. "Efficient use of resources." As Layla worked, she noticed something about the samples. The cellular structures were unstable. The plant-animal hybrids showed signs of degradation at the molecular level. Their accelerated evolution came at a cost. "You're burning through energy too quickly," she said, looking up at the hybrid. "Your cells can't maintain stability with this growth rate." The plants rustled in what might have been concern. "Solution? I need to see your root system, where the nutrients are processed. The problem might be there." The floor beneath her rippled and opened, revealing a massive network of roots descending into the earth. They pulsed with fluids, not just water and plant sap, but blood and other bodily fluids harvested from consumed victims. "Your nutrient transport is inefficient," Layla said, thinking quickly. "You're losing essential compounds before they can be properly incorporated. I can suggest a better circulation system, but I'll need to map the current one first." This was her chance. If she could identify a critical juncture in their system, a vulnerability. "Show all," demanded the plants. The opening widened, revealing more of the underground network. Layla saw that the roots extended throughout the former community garden and beyond, connecting to other structures like the one they occupied. This wasn't an isolated phenomenon. It was a colony, a collective organism spreading across the entire town. And at the center of the root system lay the source, the original Growtech experiment, now transformed into a pulsing mass of hybrid tissue that served as the central processor for the entire network. "There," Layla pointed. "That's your primary node, correct? Where the retroviruses first activated?" "First bloom," confirmed the plant chorus. "All stems from there." Layla's mind raced. The central node was the key. Destroy that, and the rest might collapse. But how to reach it? How to convince the plants to let her get close enough? "I see the problem," she said carefully. "Your primary node is overwhelmed with processing demands. It needs to be restructured for better efficiency." "Can fix?" asked the plants. "I think so, but I'll need specific compounds." She looked around the dome. "Do you have access to the Growtech chemical storage? The original formulas could be modified to stabilize your cellular structure." The hybrid's face contorted. "Dangerous. Those compounds created weaknesses in early forms." But controlled application could stabilize your advanced structures, Layla countered. Your evolution is too rapid. You're developing systems faster than you can properly integrate them. That's why your cellular walls are degrading. The plant collective rustled in what might have been discussion. Reynolds caught Layla's eye from his suspended position and gave a subtle nod toward his belt. A small canister hung there, likely a flare or incendiary device. We will retrieve compounds, the plants finally decided. A section of the dome wall parted, and vines extended outward. I'll need my colleagues too, Layla said quickly. Their expertise. No, rustled the plant chorus. They stay as insurance. You cooperate, or they feed the bloom. To emphasize the point, the flowers near Reynolds and Amanda opened wider, digestive fluids glistening inside their centers. Fine, Layla agreed, her mind working furiously, but I'll need access to the central node. The solution needs to be applied directly at the source. Dangerous for you, noted the hybrid, its borrowed face showing an unsettling approximation of concern. Our digestive process is active there. I'll take that risk, Layla said firmly. For science. The floor rippled again, opening a tunnel downward into the root system. Path to center, confirmed the plant chorus. Compounds will meet you there. Layla hesitated, looking up at her captive companions. I'll be back for you. Just do what you need to do, Reynolds replied, his meaning clear. The tunnel was organic and alive, its walls pulsing with fluids. As Layla descended, bioluminescent fungi lit her way, reacting to her presence by brightening or dimming. The air grew thick with spores and a sweet, cloying scent that made her head swim. Focus, she muttered to herself. Find the weakness. The root system was vast and complex, extending in all directions like a subway network. Channels carried nutrients from distant feeding sites to growing areas. Bundles of modified plant tissue served as primitive organs, pumping stations, filtration systems, even rudimentary neural clusters. After what felt like hours of careful navigation, Layla reached the central node. The original source of the bloom was now a massive growth the size of a small house. Part plant, part machine, as the collective had incorporated computers and equipment from Growtech into its structure. At the very center sat what looked like a heart, a pulsing, glistening mass where the retroviruses had first activated. From this point, the mutation had spread outward, evolving and adapting as it consumed more genetic material. Vines emerged from a side tunnel, carrying containers of chemicals from the Growtech facility. Growth accelerants, retrovirus media, stabilizing agents. Everything Layla would need to create either a cure or a catalyst. She set to work immediately, using the makeshift lab equipment the plants provided. As she mixed compounds, she kept up a steady commentary, explaining her process to the plant intelligence that watched through 1,000 green sensors. The retroviruses need to be modified, she explained. Their adaptation rate is too high. You're burning through evolutionary steps without proper integration. Speed necessary, replied the plants through a small speaker system they had absorbed and repurposed. Humans will attack, must spread before containment. Yes, but speed without stability is self-defeating, Layla countered. You'll collapse under your own complexity. As she worked, Layla gradually directed her efforts toward the central node's most vulnerable point, the original mutation site, where the retroviruses remained most concentrated. If she could trigger a cascading reaction there, it might spread through the entire network. Almost ready, she announced, holding up a flask of cloudy liquid. This needs to be applied directly to the central node's core. The plants observed her, but offered no objection as she approached the pulsing heart of their collective. Layla moved carefully, as if performing a delicate procedure. In a sense, she was, just not the one the plants believed. This will stabilize your cellular structures, she said, slowly pouring the compound onto the central mass. Regulate your growth to sustainable levels. The effect was immediate, but not what the plants expected. The central node convulsed, its tissues contracting violently. A high-pitched keening sound emanated from all around as the plant collective realized the betrayal. "What have you done?" The plant's voice distorted through their speaker system. "Created a targeted toxin," Layla answered, backing away rapidly. "The retroviruses made you evolve quickly, but they also made you vulnerable to specific compounds. This one triggers cellular breakdown in hybrid tissue." The central node continued to convulse, sections of it already turning brown and liquefying. The reaction was spreading outward through the root system, following the same pathways that had distributed nutrients. "You die with us," threatened the plants, as vines shot toward Layla from all directions. She dodged and ran, racing back through the tunnel as it began to collapse around her. Behind her, the central node's deterioration accelerated, sending waves of necrosis through the connected network. The tunnel writhed and buckled as she ran, the plant's coordinated intelligence giving way to spasmodic, desperate movements. When Layla finally reached the dome, she found chaos. The structure was collapsing, its engineered precision disintegrating as the controlling intelligence failed. Reynolds and Amanda still hung suspended, but their restraints had weakened. Reynolds had managed to free one arm and was reaching for the canister on his belt. "Don't!" Layla shouted. "Not yet! We need to get out first!" The floor beneath them heaved and split as massive roots contracted in death throes. The hybrid in the central flower screamed, a horrible sound that mixed human vocal cords with plant rustling. "Help me!" Layla called to Reynolds, climbing up toward him. Between them, they managed to tear away enough of the weakened vines to free him. "Get Amanda," he ordered, finally grabbing the canister. "I'll make sure this place burns." With dying but still dangerous vegetation all around them, they fought their way to Amanda and cut her free. She was barely conscious, pale from blood loss where the vines had fed on her. "We need to move," Reynolds insisted, activating the incendiary device. "This whole place is going up." They stumbled toward the dome entrance, which had partially collapsed. Outside, the accelerated forest was in turmoil. Plants that had moved with coordinated purpose now thrashed blindly or went still. The collective intelligence was failing as the poisoned central node died. Reynolds tossed the canister deep into the dome behind them. Moments later, a whoosh of intense heat signaled its ignition. The dried, dying plant matter caught immediately, and flames spread with hungry eagerness. "Keep moving," Reynolds urged as they navigated through the disintegrating jungle. All around them, evidence of the plant's rapid evolution was reverting to normal chaos. Massive structures collapsing, hybrid organisms decomposing as their unstable genetics failed. They had nearly reached the edge of the community garden when a final spasm of coordinated movement swept through the vegetation. Vines shot out with desperate strength, wrapping around Amanda's legs and yanking her backward. "No!" she screamed as the plants dragged her toward a massive flower that had opened like a Venus flytrap. Reynolds fired his weapon, shredding vines, but more replaced them. Layla grabbed Amanda's arms, pulling against the plant's grip, but they were too strong. The toxin isn't working fast enough, Layla realized. They're trying to absorb more genetic material to repair themselves. "Let go of me," Amanda gasped. "Save yourselves." "Not happening," Reynolds growled, reloading his weapon. But before he could fire again, something changed. The vines holding Amanda suddenly went limp, releasing her so abruptly that she and Layla tumbled backward. Around them, the remaining active plants shuddered and went still. The central node, Layla understood. It finally died completely. Without it, the collective can't maintain its intelligence or coordination. They didn't wait to see if she was right. Supporting Amanda between them, they fled through the rapidly decaying vegetation. Behind them, The dome was now fully engulfed in flames that spread quickly through the desiccated plant matter. By the time they reached the edge of town, the fire had become a massive conflagration, consuming the entire mutated forest. Military vehicles approached cautiously, soldiers in heavy protective gear advancing with flamethrowers to ensure nothing survived. A medical team rushed to meet them, taking Amanda from their tired arms. As she was loaded into an ambulance, Layla watched the burning remains of what had been her neighborhood. "Will it spread?" Reynolds asked quietly, standing beside her. "The mutation?" "I don't think so," Layla replied. "The retroviruses were unstable by design. They needed constant reinforcement from the central node. Without it, any remaining mutations should break down naturally." "You sure about that?" Layla turned to look at him, her expression grim. "Not really. We should burn everything to be certain." Reynolds nodded and walked away to confer with the military commanders. Layla remained, watching the flames consume what had briefly been a new kind of intelligence, terrifying in its hunger, yet almost beautiful in its adaptation. As she finally turned to join the evacuation, a tiny movement caught her eye. At the edge of a storm drain, a small vine quivered with deliberate motion, unlike the random death spasms of the plants around it. It stretched toward a puddle of standing water, its tip just touching the surface, before going still. Layla stared at it for a long moment, then deliberately looked away. She didn't alert the soldiers or reach for a flamethrower. Instead, she simply walked toward the waiting vehicles, leaving behind her a world forever changed by humanity's reckless manipulation of nature. And perhaps, somewhere in the darkness beneath the streets, carrying traces of human DNA and adaptive intelligence, something waited, learning, evolving, preparing to bloom again.